Hey, what's up everybody? This is Dumpster Cat. Welcome back to another video. In this one, we have some spoiler analysis from Wilds of Eldraine, the new set coming out, which is very exciting. I feel like we haven't been able to do spoiler analysis in quite a bit, and it's one of my favorite things to do on the channel. And even more so, we have some pretty exciting cards just recently from like the first 2 days of spoilers. I know there are a lot of leaks, and there's one specific card in particular that is quite good in our colors, but I want to wait for Wizards to officially spoil it first, just so we could be proper with it all. But I am very excited for that card. However, for today, we do have the analysis of Restless, Cottage, a new man land in our colors, which is very exciting. And with that being said, let's get into the analysis. So, Restless Cottage reads, it enters the battlefield tapped, taps for green or black of course. Then we could pay 4 mana to make it a 4/4, that whenever it attacks we get a food token, and we get to exile up to one target card from a graveyard. So right off the bat, this first line of text right here is probably the most limiting factor. Obviously, entering the battlefield tapped is not very ideal, and is probably the main reason why I am just a bit hesitant with this card. But a 4/4 body is quite respectable, and this attack clause is actually quite powerful in my opinion. And upon further analysis, when we compare this card to the other man lands we have access to in the black and green colors in the Pioneer format, it kind of seems like a combination of both Hive and Hissing Quagmire. Obviously, producing both colors makes me think of Quagmire and entering the battlefield tapped, but the body, and especially just the attack trigger, reminds me of Hive of the Eye Tyrant, which makes me pretty excited. Hive is a very powerful card that we do play in our colors in the Pioneer format. However, not having Menace, not having any other clause like Trample or Death Touch like Quagmire is pretty limiting in my opinion. The attack trigger is nice, and of course we will go into the food token clause and exiling cards from graveyards, which is pretty important. But like what makes Hive really good is of course being able to untap or get into play untapped early on in the game. And that Menace, I feel like, is just very important, and oftentimes is a game changer in terms of closing out games and really getting the damage that we need in the late game. However, being a 4/4 is pretty relevant, and of course nothing to scoff at. Gets around Fiery Impulse, pretty much all red burn. Of course dies to Fatal Push and all other types of removal, just like Hive and Hissing Quagmire do. But being 4/4 is quite relevant and is nothing that we should look over. And of course that attack trigger is kind of what really makes me like this card and makes me think of Hive, of course. Just because we get to interact with all these types of cards that are prominent in the format. Of course, Memory Deluge being prominent in blue-white control, Parhelion Greasefang, Storm Mono Green, Culture Familiar, and Sacrifice. All very important to get out of the graveyard, especially Memory Deluge in recent times has just been a big problem against me when I'm on the rock. And so, having another land that does interact with the graveyard is quite nice, despite not having Menace or Trample or anything like that. Just being a 4/4 body that does interact with the graveyard, as we know with Pioneer being a very graveyard-centric format, at least in most matchups, is quite relevant and is something that definitely makes me like this card. Now, making a food token is something that I just can't really wrap my head around in terms of how relevant that will be. The best I could come up with is if the bargain mechanic becomes relevant in our archetype, just because we can, sacrifice the food tokens to get that bargain trigger. I pulled up this card, Beseech the Mirror, just because it was the most relevant spoiler that we had that had the bargain mechanic on it, that I would think could possibly, in some manner be applicable to BGX, although I probably don't think it will be. But if any card that gets printed within this spoiler duration that has bargain and that we want to be playing, making food tokens could be quite relevant. Obviously, we're not going to be playing cards like Deadly Dispute that can just, sacrifice artifacts for value. And I think that just otherwise, the food token is probably just going to be a 2-mana gain 3 life, which is fine. I mean, it's definitely like an upside, albeit a very small one, but it's just another thing to consider and possibly look at in the future if more cards are able to interact with tokens or artifacts or even both. But that about wraps it up from me about Restless Cottage. A very exciting card, but I think my initial analysis of it is that it's just a bit weaker than Hive of the Eye Tyrant. Just that entering the battlefield tapped clause is just something that we definitely do not like to see stapled onto our lands in mid-range decks and Pioneer. But that's okay. It's pretty cool, pretty sweet. I'm glad that Wizards are printing, somewhat playable cards in the black and green colors in Pioneer, which is, of course, very exciting. Going forward, of course, keep your eyes out on more spoiler analysis content, just because it seems like this set is going to be very exciting for us rock players in the Pioneer format. So keep your eyes out on that. Of course, I'll be doing spoiler analysis on all the cards that we get to see that are at least somewhat applicable to our colors in the format. So, of course, be keen on that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Of course, subscribe if you want to, like the video, blah, 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 comment, and yeah, see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much.